My sister forgot to put on clothes again and rushed out of her bedroom stark naked. She crashed straight into my boyfriend's arms. Lifting her gorgeous face, she looked up at him with a naive, clueless smile. That was exactly how my last 5 boyfriends disappeared. 4 of them had immediate physical reactions on the spot, so I slapped them and broke up with them. The other one managed to keep his cool, but in the middle of the night, he climbed up the balcony with his bare hands and sneaked into my sister's bed. When I cried to my parents about it, they brushed it off. Bianca is just a bit airhead. She just forgot to put on clothes. If she did it on purpose, would she run around naked every single time? With such biased, unreasonable parents, I didn't dare to date anyone for 4 years. Until I met Vance. He was the most upright and intelligent man I had ever known. When we started discussing marriage, I brought him home to meet my parents. Before he arrived, I begged Bianca repeatedly, "Please, just wear some clothes." Bianca nodded obediently. But the moment my boyfriend walked through the door, Bianca was running around the house naked again. Seeing the triumphant smirk at the corner of her mouth, I suddenly realized her cluelessness was just an act put on entirely for me. Too bad for her, my boyfriend hated idiots more than anything. I had just brought Ethan through the front door. Suddenly, the bedroom door clicked open. Bianca rushed out, completely naked. Acting as if she had absolutely no idea there was a guest in the living room, she crashed straight into Ethan's chest. "Oh my gosh," she gasped, hurriedly covering her chest, her eyes welling up with tears instantly. "I'm so sorry. I forgot we had company." She looked up, her wide, misty eyes staring helplessly at Ethan. That naive, innocent look, I had seen it way too many times. That was exactly how my first 5 boyfriends had fallen into her trap. What the hell? Do you keep a naked psycho in this house? Ethan closed his eyes instantly. Relying on his years of taekwondo training, he delivered a swift, powerful kick that sent Bianca flying onto the floor. A loud thud echoed through the hallway, hard enough to shake dust off the walls. The air in the hallway froze for 2 seconds. Then came Bianca's sharp, hysterical crying. "What happened? What's going on?" My mother, Eleanor, rushed out of the master bedroom wearing an apron, still holding some half-folded laundry. My father, Richard, also poked his head out from the balcony. Ethan hid behind me, keeping his eyes squeezed shut, not daring to open them. "I'm fine. I just kicked a crazy exhibitionist." "But that crazy chick might be in bad shape," Ethan said, his voice cold as ice. On the floor, Bianca held her chest with one hand and covered her lower body with the other, sobbing uncontrollably. She bit her lower lip, her eyes filled with tears, looking utterly pathetic and helpless. "Ethan, you kicked me? It hurts so bad." Her voice was soft and sweet, trembling just the right amount. "I just have a bad memory. I forgot we had a guest over. Please don't be mad at me, okay?" As she spoke, she shrunk back like a frightened little rabbit. Eleanor immediately rushed over to hug her protectively, wrapping a coat around her. "You silly girl. Why are you running around naked again? And Chloe, you are to blame too. You know your sister is forgetful. Before you brought an outsider home, why didn't you go to her room and check on her first?" The first wave of moral gaslighting had landed precisely on me. I looked at Eleanor's face, which took it all for granted. As usual, she blamed me for everything. Bianca was always the pure, innocent one who just made silly mistakes. And I, as the younger sister, was expected to clean up her messes and prevent her disasters at all times. "Mother, I told her 3 times before I came home," I stated flatly. Bianca's tears spilled over. "Chloe, I'm so sorry. I really didn't mean to. I was just thinking about something else and got distracted." She looked up at Ethan, her eyes shimmering like water. "Ethan, please don't blame Chloe. It's all my fault for being so stupid." A textbook, pick-me-girl performance. First admit guilt, then show vulnerability, and finally, defend me to highlight her kindness and my pettiness. My first 2 boyfriends had died under this exact combo. I turned to look at Ethan. I wanted to see if his eyes, which were usually as clear as mountain springs, could see through this bitch. Ethan looked at her. There was no warmth in his eyes. He looked at her as if he were watching a poorly acted comedy show. "You really are stupid," Ethan said. His voice wasn't loud, but every word was crystal clear. Bianca froze. Eleanor froze, too. They probably never expected anyone to step right on her face when she offered herself up as a clueless beauty. "Since you knew there was an adult male coming over and you still managed to forget to wear clothes, that's not being forgetful. That's a severe lack of basic life skills," Ethan said, stuffing his hands into his coat pockets and looking down at Bianca. The silence in the room was deafening. Bianca's face, which was wearing a delicate no makeup, makeup look, instantly lost all color. She froze on the spot, even forgetting to shed her tears. How dare you speak to her like that? Richard couldn't hold back anymore. He marched over and pointed a finger at Ethan. This is my house. What's wrong with my daughter not wearing clothes in her own home? You're an outsider. You got a free show, and now you're throwing a tantrum? Let me correct you, Ethan said, meeting Richard's gaze without flinching. First, I didn't look. That flat body of hers is nowhere near my type. Second, she opened the door herself, and the hallway is a common area. If you think it's good parenting to let her daughter run around naked in common areas, then I seriously question your family's values. He turned to me. Chloe, where's your coat? I pointed to the coat on the sofa. Ethan walked over, picked it up, and draped it over my shoulders, gently fixing my hair. Let's go. The air in here is making me sick. I looked at my parents' livid faces and Bianca, who looked like she was about to collapse. Instead of the panic I used to feel, a wave of unprecedented satisfaction washed over me. Okay. I put on my coat and followed him out. Eleanor was shaking with rage behind us. Chloe, if you dare to walk out of this door with him today, don't you ever call me mother again. I stopped walking, but I didn't turn around. Whatever. Ethan pulled the door open, and a gust of cold winter wind rushed in. Chloe, mother's just saying that because she's angry. You know she has a soft heart. Bianca screamed from behind. Her voice had lost its soft, sweet tone and was filled with obvious panic. Ethan let out a low chuckle. Hear that? He whispered to me, looking down. Even a cornered rat will show its teeth when it's desperate. You were pretty brutal back there, I said as I buckled my seatbelt in the passenger seat. Ethan started the car, his long fingers resting on the steering wheel. Brutal? I was just stating facts. If she were truly stupid, she wouldn't have known to get angry when I insulted her. She should have agreed with my analysis. He turned the steering wheel and drove out of the neighborhood. Her acting skills are worse than the fresh grads working at my reception desk. I looked out the window at the passing streetlights. The heavy stone that had weighed on my chest for over 20 years felt like it had finally been cracked open. Since we were kids, Bianca had always been the center of the universe. When she ruined my homework, Eleanor would say, "Your sister is just clumsy. Can't you just write it again?" When she took the dress I liked, Richard would say, "Your sister loves pretty things. Why can't you just let her have it?" Even when I started dating, Bianca only had to act innocent and shed a few tears in front of my boyfriends. Then, those guys would find her adorable and think I was being bitter and mean. No one had ever torn off her mask as ruthlessly as Ethan did. My phone kept buzzing in my bag. I pulled it out. It was a string of voice messages from Eleanor, one after another. The red notification dots were glaring. I tapped the first one. Chloe, have you lost your mind? What kind of classless man are you dating? How dare he talk to your sister like that? Bianca has never heard a harsh word in her life, and today she was so humiliated she's crying under her blanket, hyperventilating. I listened to it with a blank face. Then, I tapped the second one. You make that Vance guy come back and apologize to your sister right now. Otherwise, don't you ever come back to this house. We raised you and fed you, not for you to team up with some stranger to bully your sister. Ethan heard every word clearly from the driver's seat. He let out a cold sneer. Does your mother only watch cheap soap operas? That script is straight out of a bad 90s drama. I locked my phone screen and tossed it back into my bag. I'm used to it. Being used to it doesn't make it right. Ethan stopped the car at a red light and turned to look at me. Are you planning on taking this forever? I looked into his clear, deep eyes. No, I said. I want her to pay back everything she owes me, with interest. The corner of Ethan's mouth curved into a beautiful smirk. Let me know if you need any help. I love watching fake people crash and burn. The next morning, I was in the middle of a meeting at work when the receptionist, Lily, sent me a Snapchat message. Chloe, your sister is here to see you. She's waiting at the front desk. I frowned. Bianca rarely came to my office. She always complained that my fast-paced tech company was too depressing. I walked out of the meeting room and headed to the lobby. Bianca was wearing a classy tweed jacket, holding a fancy thermos in her hand. Seeing me, she immediately walked up. Chloe, are you done with work? Her voice was as soft as ever, with no trace of yesterday's humiliation. What do you want? I didn't reach for the thermos. Bianca didn't seem embarrassed. She set the thermos down on the reception desk. Mother was so upset she couldn't sleep last night. I was thinking, yesterday's incident was indeed caused by my forgetfulness, and Ethan might have misunderstood me. She tilted her head slightly, exposing her slim, fair neck. I made some chicken soup. I wanted you to give it to Ethan. Consider it my apology to him. Several colleagues passing by turned to look at us. To outsiders, she looked like a sweet, caring older sister trying to patch things up for her difficult younger sister. Looking at her performance, I felt a wave of nausea. No thanks. He doesn't drink things from questionable sources. Bianca's eyes instantly welled with tears again. Chloe, are you still mad at me? I know Ethan is amazing, and you're worried I might steal him from you. But I really don't have those intentions. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was just loud enough for the receptionist and several passing coworkers to hear. This was her classic move. Preemptive strike. By being the first to say, "You're worried I might steal him," no matter what I said next, I would look insecure and jealous. If this were the old me, I would have dragged her aside to compromise just to save face. But not today. I took out my phone, opened the voice recorder app, and placed it face up on the reception desk. "Keep going," I said, looking at her. "Tell me more about how you plan on stealing him. Go into detail." Bianca's smile froze on her face. She clearly didn't expect me to just stop caring about my reputation, let alone display the recording screen right in front of her. "Chloe, what are you doing?" Her voice faltered, and her eyes kept darting toward my phone screen. "Since you love acting in public so much, let's make it a full production." I leaned against the reception desk, crossing my arms. "Didn't you say I'm afraid of you stealing him? Prove it to us. How are you going to do it? With your cheap, unbuttoned pajamas, or with this soup that probably has God knows what in it?" A few coworkers watching nearby let out soft chuckles. People in tech companies never lacked a nose for drama. Bianca understood my sarcasm, and her face flushed crimson. "Chloe Miller, you've gone too far." She finally dropped the act, her tears vanishing in an instant. "I came here out of the goodness of my heart to bring you guys something, and you're trying to intimidate me with a recording?" She reached out to grab my phone. I quickly snatched it away. "Why aren't you crying anymore?" I looked at her coldly. "Where's your helpless airhead filter? Where's that innocent, victimized look? Giving up on the act so soon?" Bianca gritted her teeth in anger. But with so many eyes on her, she had to suppress her rage. "Fine, Chloe. You think that Vance guy can protect you forever, don't you?" She leaned in close, whispering so only the two of us could hear. "Who do you think you are? Since we were kids, whenever I wanted something, Mom and Dad gave it to me. Your last two exes? I barely had to wiggle my finger, and they came begging like dogs. You think Ethan Vance is any different? Men are all the same. Just you wait. I'll have him begging on his knees to lick my toes sooner or later." She thought I had stopped the recording. She thought whispering made her safe. But she didn't know that my phone was the latest model with incredible audio capture. And she definitely didn't know that the recording app was still running in the background, even though the screen had gone black. Looking at her face, slightly distorted by jealousy and competitive rage, I found her incredibly pathetic. "Sure," I said, taking a step back to create distance. "I'll be waiting." Bianca sneered, picked up the thermos from the desk, and stomped away in her high heels. I picked up my phone and stopped the recording. Looking at the 3-minute and 12-second audio file on my screen, I smiled. My first card was in my hand. After work, Ethan came to pick me up. His car was parked by the curb, and he was holding a hot latte. "You look exhausted. Did your brainless sister disgust you again?" He handed me the coffee and opened the passenger door for me. I took a sip of the coffee. She came to my office to deliver soup today, and she officially declared war. I pulled out my phone and played the audio. Bianca's voice echoed in the quiet car. "I'll have him begging on his knees to lick my toes sooner or later." After listening, Ethan frowned in disgust. "Does she have any hygiene awareness? Licking toes can lead to fungal infections. That's disgusting." I couldn't help but burst into laughter. The stress that had built up all day vanished instantly because of his words. "You're not mad?" I asked. "Why would I be mad? Being targeted by an idiot just proves my taste is good." Ethan started the car. "But still, if we don't crush people like her once and for all, she'll keep buzzing around like a fly." His long fingers tapped the steering wheel. "When do you want to pull the trigger?" "Christmas," I said, looking at the city lights outside. "On Christmas, all our extended family will be there. Bianca cares about her perfect daughter image in front of the relatives more than anything. I want to strip her mask off in front of everyone." Ethan glanced at me. His eyes held unedited admiration. "Great plan. Need any technical support? Like casting this audio onto the TV during Christmas dinner?" "No need." I shook my head. "That's not enough. I need more evidence to prove she isn't just targeting me, but that she's a pathological liar." There were still 2 weeks until Christmas. During those 2 weeks, Bianca was surprisingly quiet. She didn't cause any drama, didn't post any passive-aggressive things on Snapchat, and didn't even bother me. Eleanor called me twice. She told me in a harsh tone that I had to come home for Christmas dinner, and I was absolutely not allowed to bring Ethan. That boyfriend of yours has no manners. I will not allow him in our house. I agreed, because I knew this was just the calm before the storm. A person like Bianca could never let things go. She was definitely planning something big. The day before Christmas, I was called back to the house to help wrap Christmas gifts. In reality, Eleanor just wanted to assert her maternal authority by making me do manual labor. As soon as I walked into the kitchen, I heard Bianca's dramatic gasp from the living room. Oh my gosh. How did this happen? I wiped my hands and walked out of the kitchen. Shattered porcelain lay scattered all over the living room rug. It was the vintage Tiffany & Company cup set I had prepared as a Christmas gift for Ethan's grandmother. I had spent half a month's salary and used several connections to get it. Now it was just a pile of worthless trash. Bianca stood nearby, holding the lid of the packaging box, looking terrified and lost. Chloe, I'm so sorry. I didn't know this box had something so expensive in it. I just wanted to help you clean up the table, and my hand slipped. She covered her mouth as tears instantly streamed down her face. Eleanor rushed out of the bedroom when she heard the noise. Seeing the shattered pieces and Bianca crying like a victim, she immediately understood what had happened. But she didn't blame Bianca. Instead, she turned to me, her eyebrows knitted closely. Why did you leave something so expensive lying around? You know your sister is clumsy. Now that it's broken, who are you going to blame? The same old excuse. The same twisted logic. I didn't say a word. I just stared at the broken porcelain on the floor. That was the exact vintage set Ethan's Nana loved. I had planned to present it to her during my Christmas visit. Chloe, how much was it? I'll pay you back, okay? Bianca walked over, gently tugging at my sleeve. Please don't be mad at me. I really didn't mean to. I'll use my savings to pay you back. Pay me back? With what? I pulled my arm away and looked at her coldly. This is a rare vintage set. You couldn't find another one even if you had the money. It's just a stupid cup set. Richard walked out of the study. He couldn't stand seeing me give his favorite daughter a hard time. Chloe, that's enough. Your sister already apologized. What more do you want? Ruining a family gathering over a cup set. Where are your manners? Manners. Generosity. Yes, those were the words I had heard the most growing up. Because I was the younger sister, because I was smart, and because I was rational. So I had to be the bigger person. I had to tolerate all of Bianca's stupidity and destruction. I'm not making a big deal out of it, I said, taking a deep breath as I picked up the pieces one by one and put them into a trash bag. But this was meant for my boyfriend's family. Since you all think it's not a big deal, you can explain it to Ethan yourselves. Hearing Ethan's name, a flash of smugness crossed Bianca's eyes. She thought that since the gift was ruined, I wouldn't be able to go to the Vance family's Christmas party. She thought Ethan would think I was classless and lose interest in me. That was her plan. Unfortunately, she got one thing wrong. I tied the trash bag and held it in my hand. Mother, what time are Uncle Robert and Aunt Margaret arriving for Christmas dinner tomorrow? Eleanor was taken aback, then said crossly, We eat at noon. Why? Are you planning to show everyone your attitude? No, I smiled slightly. Tomorrow, I'm going to make sure everyone has a great time. The next day, 11 a.m., the relatives started arriving. Robert, Margaret, and several cousins we were close with. The living room was filled with laughter and Merry Christmas wishes. Bianca was wearing a gorgeous red knit dress with a full face of perfect makeup, floating around like a social butterfly. Try these nuts. I bought them specifically for you. You look so beautiful today. That coat really suits you. The relatives were charmed. Bianca is getting more mature and sensible by the day. Whoever marries her will be the luckiest man alive, Margaret praised with a laugh. I know, right? Bianca is not only gorgeous, but has such a sweet personality. Another aunt agreed, then turned her eyes to me as I sat quietly in the corner, sipping water. Unlike Chloe, she's been a quiet, cold girl since she was a kid. Not very sweet. Chloe, why isn't your boyfriend here with you? Didn't you say he was loaded? The spotlight was finally on me. Bianca's eyes lit up. She immediately wiped the smile off her face, replacing it with a worried, hesitant expression. Please don't bring him up. Bianca sighed, sitting down next to Margaret. That man has a really weird temper. When he came over last time, he was not only rude, but he yelled at me. Chloe is so obsessed with him, she won't even listen to mother and father anymore. The relatives gasped. Are you serious? Robert frowned, looking at Richard. Richard let out a cold grunt, which was as good as confirming it. Chloe, I have to say something here, Robert said, instantly taking on his self-righteous Robert persona. For a girl, a man's character is the most important thing. A man who doesn't respect your parents and bullies your sister should be dumped immediately. Exactly, Margaret chimed in. Your sister is so sweet, and he still yelled at her? He probably has anger issues. Don't let his money blind you. The entire living room turned into an intervention against me. Eleanor sat on the sofa, looking pleased. She seemed to think that the pressure from the relatives would finally make me bow my head and apologize. I set my water glass down. Father, mother. You guys have always believed Bianca is just a sweet, naive girl who makes silly mistakes. I pulled a black voice recorder from my pocket and held it up. Since everyone thinks she's so innocent, why don't we listen to what she says when no one is watching? The dining room, which had been filled with the warm, buttery scent of roasted turkey and the self-righteous chatter of my relatives, suddenly fell deathly quiet. Uncle Robert's hand, still holding a forkful of mashed potatoes, hovered midair. Aunt Margaret's eyes narrowed, her gaze darting between the sleek black recorder in my hand and Bianca's face, which had frozen into a rigid, porcelain mask. Chloe, what is the meaning of this? Eleanor's voice was sharp, a warning edge, cutting through her maternal facade. This is Christmas. Put that ridiculous toy away. It's not a toy, Mother, I said, my voice steady, devoid of the shaking anxiety that used to paralyze me in this room. It's a mirror. And I think it's time we all took a look. I pressed the play button. The high-definition speaker on the recorder cleared its throat with a brief hiss of static, and then my own voice filled the room, crisp and calm. Keep going, my recorded voice said. Tell me more about how you plan on stealing him. Go into detail. A collective gasp rippled across the table. Then came Bianca's voice. It wasn't the soft, trembling whisper she used to charm the family. It was sharp, dripping with a venomous, arrogant confidence that no one in this room had ever heard from her. Chloe, what are you doing? Since you love acting in public so much, let's make it a full production. My recorded voice countered. Didn't you say I'm afraid of you stealing him? Prove it to us. How are you going to do it? With your cheap, unbuttoned pajamas or with this soup that probably has God knows what in it? Bianca's recorded voice let out a harsh, mocking laugh. Chloe Miller, you've gone too far. Who do you think you are? Since we were kids, whenever I wanted something, Mom and Dad gave it to me. The relatives sat frozen. Richard's face turned a dangerous shade of purple, his fork clattering against his plate. The recording continued, inexorable and brutal. Your last two exes? I barely had to wiggle my finger, and they came begging like dogs. You think Ethan Vance is any different? Men are all the same. Just you. Wait. I'll have him begging on his knees to lick my toes sooner or later. The audio cut off with the sharp, rhythmic click of Bianca's high heels walking away. The silence that followed was suffocating. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallways sounded like a countdown. This is a lie. Eleanor slammed her palms onto the table, rattling the crystal glasses. This is a setup. Chloe, you have always been jealous of your sisters' beauty and popularity. You use those computer programs. What do they call them? Deepfakes. You fabricated this to humiliate your sister? Deepfakes. I let out a soft, humorless chuckle. Mother, that recording was captured in the lobby of my company. The reception desk is equipped with 3 separate security cameras that record high-fidelity audio and video for security compliance. I have already requested the official, watermarked footage from our IT department. Do you want me to play the video on the TV? You can watch. Bianca's lips move in perfect sync with every single word. Bianca's face had completely drained of color. She looked like a ghost sitting in a festive red dress. Her hands trembled so violently, she had to hide them beneath the tablecloth. Chloe, Bianca whimpered, her voice suddenly switching back to her signature fragile tone. How could you edit a casual joke between sisters and turn it into something so malicious? I was just teasing you because you were being so cold to me. A joke. Aunt Margaret stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. She looked at Bianca, her expression a mixture of profound shock and deep disgust. You joked about seducing your sister's boyfriends? You joked about having her fiancé on his knees. Margaret, don't listen to her. Eleanor pleaded, her hands reaching out in desperation. Bianca is just a child. She doesn't understand the weight of her words. She is 26 years old, Eleanor. Margaret snapped, her voice shaking with Indignation. She is not a child. And she sounds like a calculating, manipulative sociopath on that tape. That's enough. Richard roared, standing up and pointing a trembling finger at
Me.
Chloe, you brought this garbage into my house on Christmas Day just to tear this family apart? You are a malicious, bitter girl.
Get out. Get out of my
house. I'm leaving, Father, I said, standing up calmly. But before I go, let's address the other clumsy accident that happened yesterday. I pulled out my tablet and laid it on the table. Yesterday, Bianca accidentally shattered the vintage Tiffany & Company cups that I bought for Ethan's grandmother. She cried, she apologized, and you both blamed me for leaving it out. I tapped the screen, opening a video file. Because Bianca has a history of accidentally destroying my most precious belongings, I installed a small, motion-activated security camera disguised as a digital clock on the living room shelf last month. Let's watch the replay of yesterday afternoon. I turned the screen so the entire table could see. On the screen, the living room was empty. Then Bianca walked in. She wasn't carrying anything, nor was she rushing. She walked with deliberate, slow steps toward the package on the table. The camera captured her face in crystal-clear high definition. There was no airhead confusion on her face. Instead, she had a cold, triumphant smirk. She opened the box, took out the first delicate porcelain cup, and threw it onto the floor with immense force. The sound of it shattering echoed through the tablet speakers. She took the second, the third, and the fourth, throwing them down one by one. Then, she stepped on the larger pieces with her heels, grinding them into the
rug.
Once the destruction was complete, she stood in front of the hallway mirror. The camera captured her taking a small bottle of eye drops from her pocket, squeezing 2 drops into each eye, and then throwing her head back to let out a piercing, terrified shriek. "Oh my God," one of my younger cousins whispered, shielding her mouth in horror. She practiced crying in the mirror. Uncle Robert looked as if he had just swallowed a fly. He slowly turned his head to look at Bianca, who was now hyperventilating, her eyes darting around like a trapped animal. You monster," Margaret whispered, her voice laced with pure revulsion. "You did that on purpose. You destroyed your sister's gift on purpose and then lied to your parents' faces." "She didn't lie to them, Aunt Margaret," I said, my voice dropping to a cold whisper. "They just chose to believe her because protecting their perfect, fragile daughter is more important to them than the truth. They have been doing it my entire life." "Chloe, shut up. Shut your mouth," Richard screamed, his face purple, his chest heaving. He lunged across the table to grab the tablet, but before his hand could reach it, a firm, heavy knock rattled the front door. The sudden sound made everyone flinch. Without waiting for anyone to answer, the front door swung open. Ethan stood in the doorway. He was wearing a dark, tailored overcoat, his shoulders lightly dusted with fresh snow. His expression was calm, but his eyes were like 2 pieces of polished flint. But he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a tall, tired-looking man in his late 20s, wearing a faded jacket. He looked nervous, his eyes darting anxiously around the decorated living room. My heart skipped a beat. I recognized him instantly. It was Leo, my 5th boyfriend, the one who had allegedly climbed the balcony with his bare hands to sneak into Bianca's bed. "What is this?" Richard barked, his voice cracking with rage. "This is a private family dinner. Get the hell out of my house." Ethan stepped inside, his boots clicking firmly on the hardwood. He didn't look at Richard. He didn't look at Eleanor. He walked straight to my side, his hand resting gently but possessively on the small of my back. "I apologize for the intrusion," Ethan said, his deep baritone cutting through the chaotic tension of the room. "But I believe in completing a puzzle. Chloe showed you the present. I brought the history." He gestured to the nervous man behind him. "This is Leo. I believe you all remember him as the pervert who climbed the balcony 4 years ago." Eleanor gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Why would you bring that disgusting creep back into our home? He violated our daughter." "No, Mrs. Miller," Leo said, his voice trembling but filled with a deep-seated, long-overdue anger. "I didn't violate anyone. I was set up." Leo took a step forward, pulling a stack of printed documents from his coat pocket. He threw them onto the dining table, right next to the platters of untouched food. 4 years ago, Bianca started texting me from a burner number, Leo said, looking directly at Aunt Margaret and Uncle Robert. "She claimed Chloe was cheating on me. She sent me edited photos, fake chat logs, and told me she had the physical proof hidden in her bedroom. She spent 3 weeks building my paranoia. Bianca let out a sharp, hysterical shriek. He's lying. I don't know him.
He's a
Stalker. I have the forensic data, Bianca, Ethan said coldly, his voice slicing through her panic. My company's security team traced the burner number.
It was
Registered under a secondary email address, one you use to register for your online shopping accounts. The IP addresses of the messages match this house's Wi-Fi network. Leo pointed a shaking finger at Bianca. That night, she messaged me saying Chloe was out, the balcony door was unlocked, and she had the proof on her desk. She told me to climb up quietly so I wouldn't wake her parents. When I stepped into her room, she was waiting for me. She had no clothes on, and before I could even ask what was going on, she threw herself into my arms. A second later, the bedroom door opened and Chloe walked in. Leo's eyes welled with tears of sheer frustration. She set me up. She ruined my relationship with the girl I actually loved, and she made me look like a sick predator. I lost my job, my friends, and my reputation because of her airhead act. The dining room fell into a silence so absolute that the only sound was the ragged, desperate breathing of Bianca. Aunt Margaret stood up completely, grabbing her purse. Robert, we are leaving. Right now. Margaret, please. Eleanor begged, her voice cracking as she chased after her
sister-in-law.
It's all a misunderstanding. Bianca is a good girl. She is a sick, twisted liar, Eleanor, Margaret said, her voice dripping with venom. And the two of you are just as disgusting for enabling her. I cannot believe we sat at the same table with you. Within minutes, the festive atmosphere of the house evaporated. The relatives packed their things in a flurry of hushed whispers and horrified glances, leaving the house as quickly as if it were on fire. The front door slammed shut for the final time, leaving only the core family, Ethan and Leo. Richard looked as if he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. He slumped into his chair, his hands covering his face. Eleanor stood in the center of the room, her chest heaving, her eyes wild with a mixture of embarrassment and hatred. She glared at me, her face contorted in a mask of pure rage. Are you happy now, Chloe? She hissed, her voice vibrating with malice.
You
ruined your sister's reputation. You ruined our family's name. You brought these strangers into our home to tear us apart. Are you happy? I didn't ruin anything, Mother, I said, my voice completely devoid of emotion. Bianca did this to herself. You and Father just helped her dig the grave. Eleanor raised her hand, lunging toward me with her palm open, her face twisted, in a desperate attempt to assert her fading authority. But before her hand could even come close, Ethan stepped in front of me. He caught Eleanor's wrist midair. His grip was firm, unyielding, his eyes cold, enough to freeze water. If you touch her, Ethan said, his voice dangerously low, I will ensure that every legal, financial, and social resource at my disposal is used to dismantle what little is left of your lives. I do not make empty threats, Mrs. Miller.
He slowly pushed her hand back.
Eleanor stumbled a step, looking at him with a mixture of terror and fury. Ethan turned to me, his expression softening instantly as he wrapped his arm around my waist. Let's go, Chloe. We have a much better dinner waiting for us. I nodded. I looked at the three people who shared my DNA one last time. Bianca was curled on the floor, clutching her knees, her eyes staring blankly at the shattered Tiffany pieces. Richard was silent, staring at the floor. Eleanor was panting, her face pale with defeat. Chloe, Eleanor screamed as we walked toward the door. If you walk out that door today, don't you ever call me Mother again. You are no longer a daughter of this house. I stopped at the threshold. I didn't turn around. Don't worry, I said, my voice echoing in the cold hallway. I won't. I pulled a thick white envelope from my coat pocket and tossed it onto the console table by the door. What is that? Richard's voice came from the dining room, hollow and weak. It's a detailed accounting of every single dollar you spent on my college tuition, my childhood medical bills, and my share of the rent since I turned 18, I said, along with bank transfer receipts showing that the entire amount, plus a 5% annual interest rate, has been deposited into your joint account this morning. I took Ethan's hand, feeling the solid, comforting warmth of his fingers. I don't owe you a single cent, I said. And I don't owe you a daughter. We walked out, pulling the heavy wooden door shut behind us. The cold winter wind hit my face, but for the first time in 24 years, I didn't feel cold. I felt completely, beautifully free. The drive back to Ethan's apartment was quiet, but it wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of my childhood. It was a peaceful, healing quiet.
The
Rhythmic sweep of the windshield wipers clearing the snow was the only sound in the warm cabin of the car. "Are you okay?" Ethan asked, his hand reaching across the center console to clasp mine. "I'm better than okay," I said, leaning my head against the leather headrest, watching the city lights blur into streaks of gold and red.
I feel like I've
Been holding my breath under icy water for 20 years, and I've finally broken the surface. "You did amazing," Ethan said, a gentle smirk playing on his lips.
though I
"Have to admit, seeing your sister practice her crying face in the mirror was a cinematic masterpiece. She really is a psycho." "She's a narcissist," I corrected softly. "She can't stand the idea of me having anything she doesn't. If I have a toy, she wants it. If I have a dress, she wants it. If I have a man who loves me, she has to prove she can take him."
It
Was never about the men, Ethan.
it was always about destroying me.
"Well, she picked the wrong target this time," Ethan said, his grip on my hand tightening. "But we're not done yet, are we?" I turn to look at him, my eyes reflecting the dashboard lights. "What do you mean?" "The interest," Ethan said, his eyes scanning the road ahead. "You told her you wanted her to pay back everything she owes you, with interest. The family dinner was just the principal payment. Bianca's pride is bruised, but a narcissist doesn't stop just because they've been exposed. She will try to retaliate." "I know," I said, a cold smile forming on my face. "And I'm counting on it." The next 2 weeks were surprisingly quiet. My parents didn't call. Bianca didn't send any texts. But I knew the silence was artificial. Through my cousins, I learned that Aunt Margaret had wasted no time sharing the recording and the video of the Tiffany cups with the entire extended family. Within 48 hours, Bianca had been ostracized from every family chat
Group.
Uncle Robert, who held significant influence in the local business community, had quietly dropped his support for Richard's logistics firm, causing several key clients to pull their contracts. The Miller family was bleeding, and they knew exactly who had cut them. On the second week of January, the opportunity one had been waiting for finally
Arrived.
Ethan's family company, the Vance Group, was hosting its annual winter charity
Gala.
It was a massive, high-profile event attended by the city's political elite, major business owners, and local media. It was also the event where Ethan's parents planned to formally introduce me to their social circle as Ethan's fiancé. 2 days before the gala, my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from a burner email address. "Chloe, don't think you've won. You think your little tech boyfriend is untouchable? You think he really loves you? Let's see if he still wants you when he's ruined. See you at the gala." I stared at the screen, a wave of cold satisfaction washing over me. "She took the bait," I whispered. I immediately called Ethan. "She's going to show up at the gala." "Perfect." Ethan's voice came through the line, calm and calculating.
My
"Security team has already flagged her name and face. But if she wants to play, we should give her a proper stage." "What's the plan?" I asked. "She's going to try to corner me in a private setting," Ethan explained.
It's
"Her only move. She wants to create a scandal that will force my family to distance themselves from you or blackmail us."
I've already set up the VIP
lounge on the 3rd floor of the venue. It's a restricted area, but I've instructed the security guard at the door to accidentally leave his post for 10 minutes when she arrives. "And the cameras?" "Fully operational, high definition, and streaming directly to a secure server," Ethan said, his voice dropping to a low, protective tone. "Chloe, this is going to be the final nail in her coffin. Are you ready?" "I've been ready for 10 years, I said. The night of the gala was breathtaking. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was transformed into a winter wonderland, with towering ice sculptures, cascading white orchids, and crystal chandeliers that cast a warm, shimmering glow over the dressed-up crowd. I wore a floor-length emerald green silk gown that Ethan had chosen for me.
It
was elegant, structured, and made me feel like a queen. Ethan stood by my side, in a tailored black tuxedo, his hand resting securely on my waist as we greeted his parents' guests. "You look absolutely beautiful, Chloe," Ethan's mother, Eleanor Vance, a lovely, refined woman who shared nothing but a name with my mother, said, patting my hand warmly. "Ethan has told us so much about your strength. We are so happy to welcome you into our family." "Thank you, Mrs. Vance," I said, feeling a genuine warmth in my chest. This was what a real mother felt like. At approximately 9:30 p.m., my phone vibrated in my clutch. It was a text from Ethan's head of security, Mark. Target has entered the building. She used a forged press pass under the name B. Miller. She is currently heading toward the elevators. I looked up at Ethan. He caught my eye and gave me a subtle nod. Excuse me for a moment, Ethan said to the group of city council members we were speaking with. I need to check on a minor detail regarding the charity auction. Ethan walked toward the elevators, and I followed him from a safe distance, staying in the shadows of the grand marble pillars. Bianca was indeed here. She was wearing a plunging, champagne-colored silk dress that was entirely inappropriate for a formal charity gala. Her makeup was heavy, designed to make her eyes look wider and more innocent, but her posture was tense, her eyes darting around like a predator hunting its prey. She watched Ethan get into the elevator. The digital display showed the car ascending to the third floor, the VIP lounge. Bianca immediately moved toward the service stairs, avoiding the main elevators, where security was tight. I took the adjacent guest elevator and met Mark at the security monitoring room. On the second floor, on the bank of monitors, we watched Bianca push open the heavy fire doors of the third floor. As planned, the security guard who was supposed to be stationed outside the VIP suite was gone, a half-empty coffee cup left on his small desk. Bianca let out a triumphant smirk. She didn't hesitate. She pushed the double doors of the VIP suite open and slipped inside, quietly clicking the lock behind her. Camera 3 is live, Mark said, tapping his keyboard. The monitor displayed the interior of the VIP suite. It was a luxurious, dimly lit room with deep velvet sofas, a private bar, and a large fireplace. Ethan was sitting on one of the sofas, holding a glass of scotch, looking
Completely relaxed.
The door clicked open and Bianca stepped into the room. Ethan, she whispered, her voice immediately adopting that soft, breathless, helpless quality. Ethan didn't stand up. He didn't even look surprised. He just took a slow sip of his drink and looked at her. How did you get in here? He asked, his voice flat. I had to see you, Bianca said, taking a step closer, her eyes welling with tears on command. I had to explain. Chloe, she set me up. The recording, the video, she edited them. She's been jealous of me her whole life because Mom and Dad loved me more. She wanted to destroy my life, and she's using you to do it. She walked closer, her hips swaying slightly under the thin champagne silk. Ethan, you're so smart. You're so successful. How can you let a plain, bitter girl like Chloe trick you? She doesn't love you. She just wants your money and your status. And you? Ethan asked, leaning back against the sofa, his expression unreadable. What do you want? I just want you to see the truth, Bianca whispered, reaching the edge of the sofa. She knelt down on the plush rug, looking up at him with those wide, misty
Eyes.
I'm the one who really appreciates you. I'm the one who can make you
Happy.
I'm not complicated like Chloe. I'm just a simple girl who needs someone strong to protect her. She reached out, her slim, manicured fingers gently resting on Ethan's knee. Let me show you, she whispered, her voice dropping to a seductive purr.
Let
Me show you what a real woman is like. With a sudden, practiced movement, Bianca reached behind her back and unzipped her champagne dress. The silk fabric slid off her shoulders, pooling around her waist, leaving her completely naked from the waist up. She leaned forward, her chest almost touching Ethan's knees, her face lifted in that naive, helpless smile. In the security room, I felt a familiar wave of disgust, but this time it was accompanied by a cold, clinical anticipation. On the screen, Ethan didn't flinch. He didn't look down at her exposed body. He didn't have any physical reaction whatsoever. He slowly set his glass of scotch down on the side table. You really only have one trick, don't you? Ethan said, his voice dripping with pure, unadulterated contempt. Bianca's smile froze. Ethan, what do you mean? The naked airhead act, Ethan said, standing up and stepping away from her as if she were a piece of rotting garbage. You did it with Chloe's first 5 boyfriends. You did it in my hallway. And now you're doing it here. He pulled his phone from his pocket. Did you really think I didn't know you were coming? Ethan asked, showing her the screen. Did you really think my security team is that incompetent? Bianca's eyes widened in sudden panic. She scrambled to pull her dress back up, her hands shaking. You knew? Not only did I know, Ethan said, pointing to a small, blinking blue light. disguised as a smoke detector on the ceiling, but this entire room is being recorded in 4K resolution. And the feed isn't just going to my phone. Ethan tapped his screen once. It's also being broadcasted directly to the main screen in the ballroom, downstairs, and, of course, to the local precinct. Bianca let out a blood-curdling shriek. She lunged for her dress, desperately, trying to pull it over her chest, her face distorted in pure, animalistic terror.
No. No.
Turn it off. Turn it off. It's too late, Bianca, Ethan said, his voice cold as the winter night outside. You wanted a stage. I gave you the biggest one in the city. At that exact moment, the double doors of the VIP suite were pushed open. 4 uniformed police officers stepped into the room, followed closely by me and 2 security guards. Police. Don't move. The lead officer barked, his hand resting on his holster. Bianca was on her knees, clutching her champagne dress to her chest, sobbing hysterically. Her hair was a disheveled mess, her perfect makeup ruined by black streaks of mascara. She looked like a broken, pathetic doll. She broke into my private suite, officer, Ethan said, stepping next to me and wrapping his arm around my shoulder. She was trespassing, attempting to extort me and performing acts of public indecency. I have the entire incident recorded on our security feed, which has already been forwarded to your department's digital evidence locker. The lead officer looked at Bianca with pure disgust. Ma'am, put your clothes
On.
You are under arrest.
No.
Chloe, please. Bianca screamed, looking at me with a mixture of terror and desperate pleading. I'm your sister. You can't do this to me. Tell them it's a
joke.
Please. I looked down at her. For 20 years, this girl had held a knife to my throat, stealing my joy, my confidence, and my peace, all while wearing a sweet, innocent smile. Now the knife was in my hand. I don't have a sister, I said, my voice quiet, clear, and absolutely final. The female officer stepped forward, throwing a standard-issue gray police jacket over Bianca's shoulders before pulling her arms behind her back and clicking the metal handcuffs into place. Bianca's sharp, hysterical screams echoed down the marble hallway as she was dragged toward the service elevator, her bare feet dragging on the plush carpet. The hallway fell quiet once more. Ethan turned to me, his eyes filled with a deep, quiet pride. It's over, Chloe. She's gone. I let out a long, slow breath. The invisible weight that had pressed down on my chest for as long as I could remember finally dissolved into nothingness. Yes, I said, a soft smile finally spreading across my face. She's finally gone. The aftermath was swift and devastating for the Miller family. Bianca was formally charged with criminal trespassing, attempted extortion, and public indecency, because the incident had occurred at a high-profile charity event attended by several influential legal and political figures. The district attorney's office refused to offer a plea deal. The story leaked to the local tabloids within 24 hours. Socialite arrested naked in Vance Group VIP suite in failed extortion attempt. The headline was accompanied by a blurry but unmistakable photo of Bianca being led out of the Plaza Hotel in handcuffs, her face covered in smeared mascara. The public humiliation was total. Richard's logistics company, already struggling after Uncle Robert withdrew his support, collapsed entirely within a month. No respectable business owner wanted to be associated with a family whose daughter was a convicted, naked extortionist. They were forced to sell their suburban house to pay off their mounting debts and Bianca's legal fees. 2 weeks before Bianca's sentencing hearing, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I knew who it was. I picked it up and placed it on
speaker.
Chloe. Eleanor's voice came through the line. It was no longer sharp or domineering. It was hollow, exhausted, and desperately weak. Chloe, please. We are begging you. I didn't say a word. I just listened. Your father and we had to sell the house. Eleanor sobbed, her voice cracking. We are living in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment. Richard's health is failing. And Bianca, her lawyer, says she's looking at up to 2 years in prison because of the Vance family's influence. Please, Chloe, talk to Ethan. Ask him to drop the charges. She's your sister. We are your parents. You can't do this to your own blood. I looked out the window of our new apartment. The afternoon sun was warm, casting a golden light over the cozy living room that Ethan and I had decorated together. When Bianca ruined my homework, you told me she was just clumsy. I said, my voice calm and steady. Chloe, that was years ago. When she took the only dress I loved, you told me she loved pretty things and I should just let her have it. I continued, ignoring her interruption. And when she systematically destroyed my relationships, when she drove my boyfriends to her bed and made me feel like I was crazy, you told me she was just forgetful. We made mistakes, Chloe, but we are still family. Eleanor cried out. No, Eleanor, I said, using her first name for the first time in my life.
You
Are my family.
You are just three toxic people who happen to share my house.
Bianca isn't in prison because of Ethan's influence. She is in prison because she is a criminal. And she is a criminal because you raised her to believe she could do whatever she wanted without consequences. I took a deep breath, feeling a profound sense of closure. You told me that if I walked out that door, I was no longer a daughter of your
House.
I took you at your word. Do not call this number again. Chloe.
Wait.
You can't. I pressed the red button, cutting her off mid-sentence. Then, I blocked the number. I tossed the phone onto the coffee table and leaned back against the sofa. A moment later, the front door clicked open. Ethan walked in, carrying a box of fresh pastries and a bouquet of yellow tulips, my favorite. Hey, he said, his eyes lighting up the moment he saw me. He walked over, setting the things down, and pulled me into his arms, planting a soft, warm kiss on my forehead. How are you feeling today? I'm perfect, I said, wrapping my arms around his neck, looking into his clear, intelligent eyes. Actually, scratch that. I'm just incredibly, beautifully happy. Ethan smiled, his long fingers gently brushing a stray lock of hair behind my
Ear.
Good, he whispered, because we have a wedding to plan. And this time there won't be any uninvited guests. I laughed, a sound that was light, free, and full of life. The storm had finally passed, and the sun was finally shining on a life that was entirely beautifully my own.